in the city of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, today's legislation coming out of City Hall is not only driving up the rents, but it's also driving the smaller landlords out of business. Unfortunately, and we know this and the city knows it, and why they continue with this legislation, I don't know. But the low to moderate income housing, most of the small landlords are the ones responsible for that. And they know it in the city, yet they continue with the legislation that comes out and literally drives them right out of business. Unfortunately, Hapco has been able to influence several pieces of legislation that have helped the rental property owners. So we sat down in the office 2 weeks ago, and over a 2-week period, we hammered out what legislation Hapco has any kind of influence since 1974. 7 pages. 7 pages we ended up with. I'm not going to go through 7 pages, but I will give you a few. Since 1974, here, I hope everybody's better sit down for this one. We have been fighting rent control. Yeah. Interesting that there are 33 states that say no rent control here. It's illegal, you can't have it. 33 states. Yet there are still legislators out there think this is like the golden child. Unbelievable. So what do they call rent control now? Anybody know? What do they call it? No. So they had to make it sound nicer because rent control, everybody, oh, they don't like that word. So what do they call it now? Rent stabilization or housing stabilization. Give that man a QB doll. From 1977 to 2017, we successfully fought off any legislation concerning lead paint. When it passed, thanks to our really good friend Helen Gim, in 2018, they wanted you to have your properties inspected every year. Yeah, every year. They acquiesced to us, and now it's every 4 years. If you have a tenant that's been in your unit for 2 years, and you have you went and had it lead tested right before they moved in, do you have to get a new lead paint test? The answer is no. It doesn't matter how many tenants move in and out. It's good for 4 years. It comes up a lot at the office. In 2009, PGW got a great idea. Great, you're not PGW, one of the best there is, right? They're unbelievable. Well, what did they do? They said, you know what? The tenants aren't paying us when they move out, so you know what we're going to do? We're going to move that bill to the landlord. Oh, and here's the best part of that. We're not going to tell them. We're not going to tell them. So, you as a landlord, when you went to sell your property, guess what you had? A lien. Yep. So this is PGW's way of saying, oh, we love landlords. Well, we took them to court. And the court agreed. We came to a cooperation agreement, and we now known as the Landlord Cooperation Program for PGW. And one of the best things in that cooperation program is you have to have a rental license in order to join. So all those people out there that are running by the seat of their pants and not doing it, those are the people that have to be worried about their gas bills. In 2011, the city passed rental suitability legislation, which included, oh yeah, your rental suitability, you know what that was about. Years ago, they used to come in and actually inspected your properties. Not every year, but, a number of years would pass and you get a letter, hey, we're coming in to inspect. Well, that has gone nowhere. They don't do that anymore. I haven't done it for years and years and years. So in order to say, hey, you're in compliance, they put the onus on who? Oh, the landlords again? Oh, gee, I know everybody's surprised. So here's the best part of it. They wanted to charge you $69 for a piece of paper, right? It's a piece of paper. Well, We took them to court because in the state of Pennsylvania, there's such a thing called municipal planning code. They cannot, no municipality can charge more than what it costs them for that piece of paper. So what do you pay for rentability now? It's free, exactly. In 2019, just cause legislation was being contemplated, and we're able to negotiate with the council person that introduced it so that if you sign a lease, and that's why all leases should be for a year and should renew for a year. If you sign a lease, if your tenant signs a lease for a year or more, as well as renews for a year or more, just cause legislation does not affect them. So I'll give you an example. I had a triplex. Everybody got along. One of the old ladies had to leave. Unfortunately, I loved her, but she had to go. She got a little too old. I got in a tenant. Tenant drove the other two great tenants that had been there 15 and 20 years, respectively. Crazy. They wanted to move. What can I do? The person paid their rent. I mean, you know, what can I say? But when her lease ran out, it was time to move on because I did not want to lose two good tenants, and it would be the same thing over again with this person. Just cause legislation, huge, huge, huge coup for us to get. And again, I have 7 pages of these things, and these are the big ones. They're not all like this, believe me. There's some small wins, and a lot of people complain and say, I talk to people back there now, how come we didn't do this, and how come we didn't do that? We do. Or how come we didn't read about it? Because they don't write about this kind of thing. The things that happen, it's called negotiations. And the politicians don't want any of that out there. I don't blame them. I don't blame them. So what do? We negotiate. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose. As we look ahead, Hapco remains committed to continuing our advocacy efforts, fighting for fair legislation, pushing for reform of outdated policies, and standing up for rights and interests of rental property owners at every level of government. We also, and I say this all the time, I stress this, the tenants are not the enemy. And we are not the enemy. But the problem is that we've been put at odds through a lot of this legislation. Unfortunately, the landlord-tenant groups don't help either. But we have tried to work with the city to make it good for everyone, not just landlords and not just tenants, good for everyone. Because without tenants, all of us would be out of business. And of course, without landlords, where would they live? So the sooner all of us come to the realization that we all have a lot in common and we should work towards a goal that both of us, landlord and tenant, can live with, the sooner off we're going to be. Now, here's the big thing right now. We need members. We need you to get out there. We need you to bang the bushes. We need to talk to your fellow landlords, and we need them to join. We need more members because in numbers, there's strength. And the more numbers we have, the better off we are when it comes to negotiating. We need everyone in here to do that. We are soon going to start a marketing campaign. We're going to open up the coffers, and we're going to spend some money trying to get new members. The one thing that we all know is most people don't know about Hapco. They just don't know about us. And we need you, our members, to go out and let other people know about our organization and what it does for you. Anyhow, thank you again for being here and being part of Hapco's mission. For those of you who would like to be more involved in our legislative efforts, and I know they said we're going to say this over and over again, please contact the office via email to join our legislative committee. One thing we all know in the office is we have a lot of phone calls and people want to say, hey, how can I get involved? And of course, they all want to do something about the legislation. Legislation is the biggest thing that affects all of us, and it affects our bottom line. And we are being accused of raising the rents, and unfortunately, we tried, and we haven't done it yet, but we're trying to figure out, let's go back, look at all the legislation, and let's figure out how much more the legislation is costing the renters. And it's a difficult thing to do, but I'm hoping that we'll come up with that. But again, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and let's move on with the show.
Councilmember Phillips is here? Yes, yes, yes. We're going to take some speakers, not necessarily in the original order based on their arrival, but I think, yes. The sheriff is here? Oh, your sister. Okay, well then we'll start. Okay, Sheriff, we will begin with you then. Why don't we spend a couple minutes? I think we want to set up some chairs here, right? Is Priya here? Yep. Okay, we're gonna spend just 2 minutes to set up a couple tables and chairs. As we're setting that up, I will start with the introduction here. While they do that, why don't we kind of lay a few ground rules here? First of all, I understand just about all the speakers are here, so that's good news. And we are honored, obviously, that they've taken the time to spend this time with us tonight. Frankly, as we all know, we're not always in agreement with every position they take. Many times we're not, but their attendance here obviously shows us that their commitment to understanding our positions is important as housing providers, and for that we thank all of you speakers for being here tonight. Each one is going to begin by kind of sharing their thoughts on issues that concern all of us. We will then have a short question and answer period, speaker by speaker, okay? We'll do it kind of as we did Ask the Attorney before. You'll raise your hand. Again, we are kind of begging that you keep your questions short and keep them relevant to obviously what the speaker can talk about and not super personalized, right, to a specific situation. We're probably not obviously going to get to everybody here, but we'll do our best. And most of all, we do ask that everyone is respectful of our speakers and, again, keep those questions away from anything very personal. The goal here, obviously, is to get as many questions answered as we can, that the majority of members would be interested in those answers. And so with that, we will begin with Philadelphia Sheriff Rochelle Balil, sworn in 2020, the first elected African-American woman sheriff, and in fact, the first woman in the history of that office. She is a 27-year veteran of the Philadelphia Police Department, served in various civic organizations, worked with recruits at the Philadelphia Police Training Center, is an advocate for criminal justice reform. If you joined us on a virtual call, I think it was back in December, she spoke to us then virtually on some of the challenges of handling ejectments and squatters and so forth. At the time, she was talking a lot about trying to increase staff and technology, and I'm sure that will come up in conversation as well. So with that, Sheriff, why don't we have you come up here. We're going to put a microphone down, and we'll kind of give you the floor for a few minutes, again, to introduce yourselves, and then we'll take some questions, okay? Thank you. And we'll need microphones, right?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rochelle Balil, the Sheriff for the City and County of Philadelphia. Just to let you know, I only been there one full term. So I can give you a little history of me coming into the Sheriff's Office and what we are trying to do. Every one of you can go on to phillysheriff.com and download our term report. It shows everything that we have upgraded in the Sheriff's Office as far as technology, equipment, and all those things. So just to give you a little bit, when I came in, a pandemic hit. I walked in 2020 to almost every single computer had a back to it that's this big. It's almost like that old TV with tubes in it. I know none of y'all remember that, but I do. And so it's almost like my analogy that I constantly say. I walked in, it's almost like I bought a brand new car. I opened the door of the car, there's no lights, there's no engine, there's no transmission. There was nothing in this brand new car that I was elected for. And so instead of running away, we decided to build from the ground up. There was no transition into this organization. There was no pamphlet identifying anything. I mean, absolutely nothing. And so what we began to do is analyze everything in that office to see where we needed to upgrade and where we needed to change and what we needed to fix. It's almost like every time you take a step, you hit your toe, you look under the rock, and there's something else that needs to be done. And so that's what we're doing now. We're sort of like upgrading everything in that office to modernize the technology, to basically get information to people about what it is that we're doing there and how we're doing it. So I want everyone to take that opportunity to go on phillysheriff.com and get our term report so that you can see what we had to compete with to what we brought to just in one term. And nobody's perfect. We still got work to do. And so let me introduce my Deputy Chief Inspector. I'm going to call you Deputy Chief Inspector. Chief Deputy Thornton is over my court operations. Inspector Fallon is over the whole civil unit. When you're talking about writs, when you're talking about evictions, he's over the whole civil unit. And just so that you know, we just got the landlord-tenant work just last year, the end of last year, last August. And so we normally did maybe 700 a year? 25 evictions per week to now almost 200. I don't be clapping yet, because if you're a landlord, don't be calling us talking about, well, when can you do mine yesterday? Because I just said, from 25 a week to almost 200. So on top of that, we had to figure out how we can do it fairly and justly, and make sure that nobody in the process gets hurt. And so I had started from that an eviction integrity unit. I changed my model with my deputy sheriffs, because normally they would come in, spend 4 hours on the paperwork, and then the other 4 hours they would hit the streets. I said, that's not going to work for us. So I hired civilians to do the input into the system, and so they can have real conversations through computers that the deputies will have. So the deputies just grab their stuff, and they're out on the street almost all day and even longer. So just to put a plug in there, we hiring. So if you got any grandchildren, nephews, nieces that you know you don't want to have to keep paying for and they need a job, go to phillysheriff.com to make sure that we are hiring. Huh? Good. Send them to, you know what, you're right. Go to phillysheriff.com because they need a job so they can pay that rent. and I'm with you on that. So we just going to just go into whatever questions you want to ask. You want to say something, Thornton?
Yeah, I do. Good evening, everyone. Again, thanks for Hapco for allowing us to come out here. I think it's important that we have these type of conversations so everyone knows who we are and what we do. That's like one of the biggest issues in the sheriff's office. People really don't know our functions. They just know that there's a sheriff's office. Obviously, you know, you landlords probably know that, yeah, sheriffs do evictions and things of that nature, but overall, people really don't know. We are the enforcement arm of the courts, meaning that if the court's given a judgment order, we are supposed to go out and enforce that order. We are impartial to everyone involved in the entire situation. We are professionals, and we hold that up to that standard, representing the city and county of Philadelphia. So I just really want people to understand that's who we are and that's who we represent. I'm not really going to speak a whole lot on that, but we do have Inspector Fallon, who you probably like to talk to, who knows the ins and outs of this entire process. So I'm going to turn it over to my former partner, Inspector Fallon.
Let me just say this about Inspector Fallon. If any of y'all have dealt with him, thank you for being so nice.
Good evening, everyone. We took this challenge on back in August. I was on my way down the shore when I got a phone call and I found out the landlord-tenant office was shutting down. So I spent pretty much that whole weekend thinking about how I'm going to get this done. And our sheriff and our chief is very supportive. So like she said, we immediately increased civilian staff to help get the current deputies, well, they're detectives, out on the street more and less time in the office. That allowed us to start scheduling more evictions and also allow them to get to their other paperwork, because evictions isn't their only function. They're also out there serving civil process and enforcing money judgments and things of that nature. We also assist L&I with court orders. We do a variety of things other than just evictions, so we have to provide time for all that. So we started gradually increasing the amount of evictions each week till we get to the point where we're at tomorrow, where we're at today, and we're going to continue to increase that in order to keep everyone happy. I don't want there to be a backlog. I don't want my phone to be ringing as much as it is. I want it to, you know, calm down and do these efficiently and safely for everybody. But there is one thing I could use some help with. This week we had 163 evictions scheduled. I sent all those dates out, and we got back 44 cancellations, where tenants have turned over possession of the property to people, or judgments were satisfied and we weren't notified. Those were 44 evictions that we didn't need to schedule, and 44 of your peers could have had those eviction dates. There's not enough time to do fill-ins on those replacements, so please, if people vacate, if your attorneys satisfy the judgment, let us know too. I mean, that's something that's filed with the court, a satisfaction of judgment, so it should be automatic to tell the sheriff we also satisfied it, because the courts do not let us know that. So that's just something small that could help us work together more efficiently, because we're all in this together.
So let me just add to that. We are in a hiring process for deputy sheriffs. So the ones that can serve them are our detectives and our deputy sheriffs only. Civilians can't go out there and do any evictions. So that you know our process in hiring. This is not regular. In Philadelphia Police Department, which I was one, we can go to our academy class and go home at night. Well, with the Sheriff's Department, the only place that get their certification training is up at State College. So when we put on a hiring process, by the time we get to orientation and tell them that they got to go up to State College, stay there 5 days a week for 19 weeks, and only come home on the weekend, guess how many people say, not me? Too many. So that's one of the problems we are having in hiring and training our deputy sheriffs. And so since I've been in office, the one thing I've been fighting for is that we have an academy class here. So I'm going to get y'all help on this one. Y'all might have to go protest for us. Because it's almost like pushing on people who don't want to move. We need to have our academy class here. We're the biggest sheriff department in the state of Pennsylvania. We will do better in hiring people if they can go to class and go home. I understand it. People do not want to leave their families for 5 days and only come home on the weekend, and that's not really a weekend because they come home Friday after 5, and they got to be back Saturday night to be in class, Sunday night to be in class on Monday. So that's our process. But I am working fiercely on getting that academy here in this city so that people can take this opportunity of a career and go home at night to their families, and I think we'll do a lot better. So we got a place for our academy. We're talking to PCCD. We're talking to the city administration in reference to our budget in these areas. And so if y'all all want to send a letter to city council, state representatives, because you got city council right here, if you want to say to all of them, send them all a letter saying, look, the sheriffs need an academy here because it's difficult for people to go away 5 days a week for 19 weeks. So help them out by making sure that academy, and then send one up to PCCD and let them know that they need to stop pushing back on having a regional academy here. Because then those that in Montco, Bucks County, Montgomery County can also come to that academy here in Philadelphia. And I think they would like it also. So now we can open up for any questions or concerns you might have.
And I must say, just to keep things moving, unfortunately, we have time for just a couple questions. So,
Yes?
As it pertains to
hold on. We need a microphone for anybody who's going to speak.
as it pertains to a squatter, as it pertains to a squatter, how long do if a person break into a house that's vacant, how long do that person have to be in there before you have to legally take them to court and not just call the Philadelphia Police Department to get them out of there?
Okay. What's that process?
I'm not sure of the timeline on that, but I do know that there was legislation passed in 2018 to help with criminal and defiant trespassers to get a speedier eviction date through the courts. You could have to, you call the police, you get police reports, and then there's certain steps you take. There's certain steps you have to take within the courts to get an expedited eviction. I have enforced expedited evictions. The sheriff's office, we kind of just see the end result, which is that court order. But I know I've gone out on court-ordered evictions that the people got. They started like a week ago, and now they got their paperwork, and we're going right out a day or two later and doing the eviction. So there is a remedy out there to get an expedited process through the courts. I know that didn't answer your question on a timeline, but I think as soon as they move in and it looks like they live there, the police are not going to remove them.
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Hi, Sheriff. Thank you so much for coming out. I agree with you 100%. If we had an academy in Philadelphia that would sort of facilitate the timeline, realistically, though, that's not going to happen for quite some time. The wheels of justice in Philadelphia move very slowly. Can you perhaps consider giving those people who are going away from their families some kind of financial assistance, a $1,000 bonus, $5,000 bonus? There's a number that'll work to get people to go there.
We can't do that. That's the city administration that be able to give bonuses. Right now we're hiring, and we got, for those who have never been a city employee, there's a 20,000, it's 10,000. I want to give them 100,000, but you can't do that. It's a $10,000 bonus that we're giving people right now. And that's the city. I can't negotiate any of that. That's the city.
How about writing a grant for those funds?
You got a grant writer that can write a grant for that? Because I'm telling you, the city are the ones that do that. We have no say in bonuses. They come up with that according to their budgets or how they deal with the budgets with the city. Contracts. That might be negotiated. Yes, sir.
Okay, we have time for one last question.
Hey, so I love you guys. You've helped me out a million times. The one question I have is like, so you're doing evictions and ejectments. Evictions are close to 60 days on lockout. Ejectments can be close to 3 months. Like, what's an ideal timeline? I know you're hiring, but like, what's an ideal timeline for you guys to perform a lockout?
Are you talking about from the time we get the writ?
Yeah.
And with ejectment, with a common pleas writ, we first give them a 21-day notice to vacate, and then we like to be about a week or two past that 21 days. So even with the landlord-tenant matters, from that first writ to that getting the alias writ and doing that lockout, my ideal time frame on that would be like a 4-week period.
So is it a staffing problem?
Yeah, so as we continue to get more people, I'm going to increase the amount of evictions we schedule daily.
Yeah. And then do you know like what that timeline looks like to reduce that down?
To staff?
Yeah.
We're working on that now. The hiring is ongoing right now. I see them doing background investigations. As soon as we get those people in and get them into the courthouse, we can take people from the courts to work in my unit. But we do want to get it to a reasonable timeline for everybody.
He said no more questions.
Right. Your first writ, alias writ. First writ, 10 days notice to vacate, then you get us the alias writ. Then a couple weeks after that. Yep.
It's not the city about the university. It's the fact that it's up at Penn State and the board basically decides it to be up there. We are fighting for it to be here in this city. We already have a place for it. It's just they got to vote on giving us a regional academy here in Philadelphia. Because I'm sure all of y'all would just open up your homes to have this academy.
Okay, I think we're going to have to cut this off here. Thank you so much for giving us the time. We very much appreciate it. Cheryl, do you want to come up here?
Anybody that wants to talk to Thornton or Fallon, they will still be here, so you can ask your questions.
Okay, up next, we'd like to invite Hapco member Cheryl Sittman for just a couple minutes on stage here. She's the administrator of the Philadelphia Landlords Connect on Facebook with an observation that she just wanted to make for a couple minutes.
That's on the screen. Okay. Oh. This one? Okay. Thanks so much for giving me an opportunity to talk. I was waiting for the city council members to come because my comments are primarily directed to them. As the admin for the Philadelphia Landlords Connect group on Facebook, which I hope that many of you have found and managed to join, I've been privy to see many of the frustrations of people, of landlords, and I wanted to take an opportunity to speak not only for myself, but for all of the landlords here and in the group. So this is mainly addressed to the politicians among us. When I started buying properties 9 years ago, I sincerely believed I'd be supported for the work I was doing because I was creating homes out of uninhabitable blight. Instead, I was met with a series of policies that quite frankly felt like gotcha. The policies aren't about helping us to succeed to create good housing options and improving the city's neighborhoods, but about trapping us to get caught in not being compliant. Do you know how many people in Philadelphia make a living just out of helping property owners to be compliant? It's ridiculous. and it all adds to the cost of rent. The problem is that many of the laws are created to punish the bad actors, but they've become a drag on everyone. Instead of being partners in improving neighborhoods, landlords are treated like criminals. And this is not a room of criminals. This is a room full of earnest small business people providing the city with a vital service. Oops. Rent is a direct result of costs. Taxes, insurance, repairs, and layer after layer after layer of regulations. That makes every improvement harder and more expensive to deliver. We want good, long-term, happy tenants, but we have to cover our costs. We can agree on that, right? Meanwhile, in cities with fewer regulations and costs, like Houston is an example, renters spend about 25% of their income on rent. In Philadelphia, it's 32%, and it's climbing. And Philly housing is not nicer or safer than Houston's. If heavy regulation were the answer, wouldn't housing in Philly, a city known for some of the highest amount of housing regulations, be admired for affordability, quality, and safety? But here's the reality. When you create complex, costly processes, you don't create better housing. You create barriers for our small operators and opportunity for large corporations. You drive out the ones who lovingly fix up the vacant properties, who care about their tenants, who invest in Philly because it's Philly. And what's the result? Either vacant, decaying property, of which Philly has loads, or corporate owners who have the resources to navigate the system, to absorb expenses via economies of scale, and who charge accordingly. Philadelphia needs policies that support the people trying to do the right thing, not policies that punish them when they forget to get a document signed by a tenant that does not even have a place for a signature, or forces them to take care of bed bugs for a tenant who brings a used mattress into the property 6 months after they moved into a new home, a clean home. Each regulation that is passed without understanding how it affects landlords or the entire housing ecosystem ultimately harms renters and the city. Many of the regulations and ordinances contribute to creating a bad housing culture, one of animosity towards owners and a lack of accountability that frequently leads to destruction of property and abuse of the laws. That contributes to higher rents, and owners need to account for higher repair costs in a city where tenants do not worry about the implications of damaging property. I want to tell you a little story about hearing aids, even though it sounds like it's not related. For years, people who needed hearing aids had to go through licensed gatekeepers. They needed a prescription. Prices were crazy expensive, and millions went without. When regulation finally loosened, it did not lead to chaos. It was a breakthrough. Access increased, prices dropped, and lives improved. We can all learn something from that story. Our current system keeps up the appearance of protection, but it's an outright lie. You need to stop building policy around the worst case scenario and start building policy for the people who are trying to do the right thing. Please include us in your decision-making process, and please take our input to heart. I think we want the same things for the city. Keep in mind, it's easier to stop things from being built than to build them. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay. We want to welcome all of our guests here. Thank you so much for being here, and we're a little bit behind schedule, no surprise. It usually works that way. So what I think we'll do, if we could, is one by one, just for about a minute or so, why don't we have you each introduce yourself, and then we'll give you additional time to kind of, offer a short presentation, and one by one, starting with you, Senator, we'll work our way down, okay?
Sure, good evening. My name is Frank Farry. I'm a state senator from Bucks County, just outside of Philadelphia. My district includes Bensalem, Lower Southampton, which both abut Philadelphia. I think part of the reason I'm here is I just got done a 2-year term serving as the chair of the Urban Affairs and Housing Committee in the Senate. So I've worked with, well, Paul was over there somewhere. I've worked with Paul and your team on various pieces of legislation. Prior to getting elected to the Senate 2+ years ago, I served 14 years in the House with my former colleague, but still friend to my left. So appreciate the opportunity to be with you this evening.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Donna Bullock, President and CEO of Project Home, which is a nonprofit organization focused on ending chronic homelessness here in the city of Philadelphia. And prior to that, as my former colleague mentioned, I served in the State House for 9 years, representing the 195th District, which includes parts of North Philadelphia and the Art Museum area.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rue Landau. I'm a city council person at large, so I represent the entire city. I got to know the Rep Bullock when we both worked at Community Legal Services together. I was in the housing unit. And then I ran the city's Commission on Human Relations and Fair Housing Commission before being elected and starting my term in council in January of 2024.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anthony Phillips. I'm the City Council member for Philadelphia's 9th District. That is Northwest Philadelphia and Lower Northeast. I just want to say that I'm here because I want to learn more about what you're interested in and find ways to have us all work together in that one Philly unison. But also, I'm the youngest member of Philadelphia City Council. I ran youth programs prior to this. And I love service. I want to be able to listen and create transformative service for our neighborhood. So happy to be here. And also, one of my person is just like family. My mentors here is a landlord, Gus Tolson. So appreciate you as always. He's a Hapco member. I didn't even know that. So what a surprise today.
Very good, and thank you all four of you for being here. What we'll do next, if you're prepared, starting with Senator Farry, we'll just ask you to make a few remarks, and then we'll take a few questions. I think there may be some who may not be able to stay here the entire time. Of course, we do understand that, but Senator Farry, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and unfortunately, my wife just had a major surgery, so I do have to get back to Bucks County. But I'm happy to speak to the legislative process in Harrisburg, as well as take a few questions. You know, our government currently in Harrisburg is divided government. You may have heard the governor say that several times. We have a Democrat governor. The House is divided 102 Democrat to 101 Republican. And the Senate is 27 Republicans and soon to be 23 Democrats. New ones getting sworn in next week. And I don't say that for partisan reasons. I say that because if anything is going to be signed into law, you're going to have to get 102 of those representatives to agree. You're going to have to get 26 of those senators to agree, and you're going to have a willing governor. So I know there is concern from my former role as chair about such issues as rent control, the look back, correct, Paul? The ceiling bill, and those sort of things. And having chaired the committee for the previous session, I will tell you a lot of our focus has been on issues of blight, of returning properties into the marketplace through redevelopment, through economic development. Bucks County has a great program through our redevelopment authority where they will take an abandoned and blighted property, they will take it, they will contract with a developer who becomes the new property owner to clean that property up and get it back in the marketplace. And a lot of times those properties turn out to be rental units. So, you know, obviously there's different state laws that apply to the city versus the suburban counties. But I can tell you the work that we have done on a bipartisan level has been to try and return properties to the marketplace. You guys went through a lot during COVID, right? You know, it was pretty tough, I'm sure. You know, the first property I ever owned was in 2002. My mom, who was in real estate, and I jointly bought a Victorian in Langhorne. and it was 2 apartments, first floor apartment, second floor apartment. I lived in the second floor. We rented out the first floor, and we ended up owning that property for over 20 years. I've dealt with the non-paying tenants. I've dealt with actually being sued by my tenant for their security deposit back, and yet they had vacated the property and didn't fulfill their contract. And despite my efforts to mitigate, they brought me before the district justice, who was sympathetic to them and didn't give a hoot that I had to pay the mortgage payment out of my own pocket, right? Because the bank certainly wanted their money. So I've walked in similar shoes to what you have walked in. I do not believe some of the measures you're concerned about will become law. We have some very significant budgetary issues we're dealing with in Harrisburg. But my suggestion is this. You should have relationships with whoever the state rep is where you live, whoever the state senator is where you live, but also where your properties are, because it also gives you a multiplier effect. And if you're trying to provide, because we have roughly 100,000 unit housing shortage in the Commonwealth, as estimated by the state's Chamber of Commerce. Those 100,000 houses are not, units, however you want to label them, are not being built tomorrow. I think we need to look at, converting our commercial space back to residential uses where appropriate. To the woman that spoke right before this panel began, I have to say I agree with a lot of what she said. Burdensome and overregulation at the local level makes it very hard to develop properties. I am a volunteer fire chief where I live, and my volunteer firefighters can't afford to live in the community where they were raised. So when the time comes and they're moving out of mom and dad's house, we are running out of volunteers because they have to move to a different community. And when we run out of volunteer firefighters, we end up with more career firefighters. Philly firefighters are great fellows. A lot of them are my friends. But it raises the tax base, which then makes it harder to actually have to live in that community. So trying to develop affordable housing, attainable housing, I'm starting to call it community housing, so our teachers, our police officers, our 911 dispatchers can afford to live in the community in which they work. Our nurses is a real challenge where I'm from because of a lot of zoning issues, a lot of NIMBYs. I'm pretty sure everybody here knows what a NIMBY is, not in my backyard. But I think we need to really look at not necessarily taking away local controls, because I'm sure the municipal officials to my left, want it left for them to make the best decisions for what they believe they can at the local level. But there's got to be a balancing act so we can get more housing stock on the marketplace. So, and affording those opportunities, whether through its grant programs, whether it's through incentivizing redevelopment of commercial and office space into residential, I think we need to be looking at those kinds of things. So to the moderator, if it's okay, I'm happy to take a few questions.
Yeah, absolutely. I might add, volunteer fire chief for 20 years?
25.
25 years. So congratulations and thank you for your service. I do know he needs to go, but if you have any questions on the state level for the senator, now's the time to ask. We can take one or two.
So the question was what happened in that litigation. So I actually countersued for the balance of the rent. I would have never pursued, the nutshell was this. I allowed her to move in early. Her dad was going to repaint the apartment that needed. I bought all the paint, right? I was trying to help her out because she was stuck with no place and I needed the time to paint it. She literally never moved in. Her dad actually moved in. He was not on the signed lease. So she sued for her security deposit in first month. She never occupied. I was only able to get a relocation tenant for 3 months. By the time it worked its way, I countersued for the balance. I walked into a judge and I'm like, Your Honor, what I lost in between her first months and her security deposit in this half-painted apartment that was a mess, and they actually changed the colors. It was a lot. But regardless, I said I'm willing to drop my countersuit. Just let me keep the security deposit in first months, and she should be just fine. And he actually split the baby, dismissed my countersuit, let me keep the security deposit, but I had to return her first month's rent. Luckily, I'm an attorney, so then I had to appeal it to the Court of Common Pleas, and then she disappeared. So, yeah. But I mean, the reality was I ate a lot of mortgage payments over that window of time for actually trying to be a nice guy and help this woman out that was coming out of a domestic situation, and ended up eating a not so tasty sandwich. I did run into the district justice at a local watering hole about 6 months later, and he is not an attorney, and he's like, I'm sure you're mad at me. I'm like, I don't care if you rule against me, you know, if the law is truly on the other person's side, which actually I would settle that. I would never take that to court. I'm like, but you didn't follow the law. I'm like, that's what my issue is, while it was costing me a lot of my money that I was literally paying out of my savings. So I'm sure you guys have maybe had some similar experiences. I think our court system's a little different than your court system, but it was through the local magistrate this all happened.
Anything else?
There was one up there.
And if it were a different business that you were ripped off on, you would have gotten different treatment. And that's all we ask for. We're simply business people who want to be treated like every other business. If people steal from us our services, we should be reimbursed. Not the opposite. We get handcuffed financially and legally, and we turn into the mini nightmare that you experienced, no fault of your own. And you know, that wouldn't happen to my mechanic, my accountant, my plumber, but it happens to a landlord because, you know, everyone hates a landlord. We're like the lawyers of the 80s. But that should change. We just want to be treated fairly, up and down, the whole system.
And I think elected officials, whether it's federal level, the state level, the municipal/county level, they're, to what the woman spoke to here, I'm sorry, forgive me for not knowing her name, but there is over-legislating that happens sometimes. She spoke about the bad actors, and there's regulations targeted to those bad actors, but it handcuffs you guys and is costly to you in terms of being able to do what you do. And, you know, it's a balance we have to strike. You know, there's nothing worse than we end up with unintended consequences when we legislate something. That's why I think it's important that you develop a grassroots relationship with your elected officials to explain what you're going through.
I just wanted to quickly chime in. One of the things I just want to say, all of you are landlords, correct? Yes. I've been on council since November 2022. I'm the youngest member of council. And I want you to know that we have had different legislation that has come out around housing, so forth, all that and more. I have never seen any of you all come up for testimony. Like, if you have come, you don't come in droves, right? And I want you to know that what I'm trying to say is that it's important. I'm trying to say it's a positive thing. Sometimes the over-legislation might happen in the state, city level, whatever, because you got to find a way to bring your voices to the table so folks can always hear that, because those people, the people that have the issues, their voices are always there in droves. So that's things I want, you know, just
Can I respond to that real fast? Yeah. A lot of these members are Hapco members. A lot of these members are Hapco members, and they're represented by the voices of Hapco, which we hope obviously.
No, Hapco's there.
Yeah.
But when Hapco comes, but what I'm saying to you is that not only does the Hapco people come, but their people come as well. And I think that would be helpful in making sure that you guys are not, your voice is not missed in some of these things.
Yeah, can I address that? So, Councilmember Landau has seen many members at city council meetings. And what ends up happening when we show up at a meeting is that the tenant organizations get put onto a panel. And they get to speak as long as they want on the panel. And then the Hapco members that show up are given 2 minutes to speak in public session, right?
I was just trying to be helpful, so I ain't trying to.
Yeah,
that's all I'm trying to say.
No, if I just
I'm just trying to be. I'm just saying. I'm not going to drain it, but I see to your point. I'm just saying that we just recently have had some housing things pop up, and like you said, the people with the tenants, right? I mean, I'm always listening. We want to hear from both sides.
We had 20 people.
He wasn't there.
Session.
Which was
he wasn't there.
No, I know he wasn't.
Oh
there.
well. All right.
So I'm not,
That's okay.
I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go there. But the reality is,
that committee. I'm not on that committee.
No, but here's what happens. Okay, we're not given any respect. We're put at the end. most of the members of the committee have already left. We're sitting there giving testimony, and the committee members aren't even in the room. And we're only allowed to speak for 2 minutes. So if council would really be interested in what we had to say, number one, we should be put on a panel. And number two, why aren't we allowed to go first, or second, or third, or fourth? No, we go last. And that's a problem. So now we have to all sit there through the entire meeting to be allowed to speak when everyone else left.
Well, you also have to recognize, the author of the bill determines, and the chair of the committee, which I'm not on the housing committee, which is why I'm not part of those things. They determine who's on the panel and also the structure of it. So the structure comes from the chair in the housing, whoever the author of the bill is. So, but yes, on Thursdays.
So to your point, if you could do us all a favor and maybe talk to the chair of the committee and recommend to the chair of the committee that, hey, I was at a Hapco meeting and they feel totally disrespected. And that when they show up at a hearing, they would like to have the same opportunity as the tenant organizations have. That would be very helpful.
If I could just jump in for a minute, because I do want to work our way for some introductory statements. And also, Senator, I know there's a... Yeah, absolutely. Go right ahead.
So I'll just close with one point. One of the things I always say is the first time I meet somebody, whether they live in my district or they have a business in my district, the first time I meet you since I've been in elected office for a little window of time now, over a decade, if the first time I'm meeting you is when you're pulling the fire alarm, right, because there's a huge problem, you know, there's been plenty of opportunities to meet. So what I'm going to suggest to you to build on what the city councilman's saying and to build on what Paul is saying is take advantage of reaching out not just to your state rep and state senator. I didn't want to get into the municipal stuff, but reach out to your city council representative that has the district, your city council representative at large, introduce yourself to the chair of the respective committee that has jurisdiction over your issue. Even if you just send an introductory email to them and say, hey, I'm a landlord, I own X number of units in your district, I'm a good landlord, I'm part of this organization, you know, down the road I may be in touch if anything's pending before you that is going to affect us. Because in every legislative process, whether it's city-wise or state-wise, there's only going to be so many people that get to speak through a hearing process. But you know what? Maybe they remember you sent them that email, we'll say on May 1st of 2025. You know, so when you're contacting them about a problem in the fall of 2025, you can remind them you sent them an introductory email and offer to be a service and help them out. Maybe they have somebody looking for a unit one day or whatever, and they think, oh, these are some folks we can reach out to. So just another bit of suggestion, because I really believe in grassroots efforts, and it's not to take away from the organization because they're doing their job. That's why things like this are going on. But I believe that extends beyond your trade organization to also your actions as an individual. And don't forget, it's who represents you where you live, but also where your units are. So, but I do thank you for the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, Senator, a lot on your plate. Thank you so much. We're very appreciative of your being here. Donna Bullock, the President and CEO of Project Home.
Thank you. Thank you again for the introduction and this opportunity to speak with you all. First, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to Hapco. When I was an elected official, Hapco was always in my corner and supportive of me. Victor Pinckney's office and a lot of his properties were in my district. I had an opportunity to speak before this membership body several times. What I will say is that we didn't always agree, and that's okay. What I appreciated was the opportunity to meet with your leaders, to go through legislation, to understand where we may be able to come to some agreement, what I may not be seeing. And what I think the senator is suggesting, and maybe even what Councilman was suggesting earlier, is this is the one thing I always said. I am not the landlord expert, right? And what I hope most elected officials would acknowledge is that we're not the expert in most industries, right? We are elected officials. We may have been a lawyer. We may have been a landlord. We may have been a doctor. We may have been a social worker. We may have been a homemaker. In the state legislators, we had farmers. We had folks who were firemen and all kinds of different professions. You are the expert in this space. Take the time to educate those who represent you. Work through your leadership at Hapco to access those who represent you and offer your expertise. Sit down with those who represent you and help them understand why their legislation may actually impact the availability of affordable housing in our city. Now, I think one of the reasons why I'm on this panel is because I'm no longer elected, so I'm not asking for your vote nor your endorsement. So I can, later on answer some questions maybe a little bit more honestly and not throw my former colleagues under the bus, but try to be as honest with you as possible and really just keep it real with you. I do want to take a few moments to talk about the work that I'm doing now and why I think that work is so it relies on what you do. So I am the President and CEO of Project Home. As I mentioned earlier, we work to end chronic homelessness here in the city of Philadelphia. First, I want to say that the city of Philadelphia, while we may be the largest poorest city, and we've heard that statistic before about our poverty rate, there is something very unique about that number in juxtaposition to our homeless population. Even though we have this high poverty rate, we have one of the lowest numbers of street homelessness for big cities across the country, right? And what I think that mostly means is that our housing is affordable, number one, that we have organizations like Project Home in place to connect folks to housing and to services. And what we do at Project Home is we understand that the folks we serve that are experiencing chronic street homelessness, they usually have mental health issues or are experiencing substance use disorder or some other vulnerable chronic medical issues, that for them, they need more than a pair of keys to be successful in their housing. They need support, they need employment, they need education and medical care. And so our HOME stands for Housing Opportunities for Employment, Medical Care, and Education. We wrap around those services individuals in the housing that we provide. We provide over 1,000 units, so much like you, I am also a landlord right now. Right? We have over 1,000 units of supportive housing throughout the city of Philadelphia. We develop our housing and we provide those services within the housing. A lot of our individuals, though, are, once they reach that place of stability, are often looking towards the private market for permanent housing, independent housing, and you are often the place where they land. Our small landlords in our communities that provide some of the most affordable housing throughout the city of Philadelphia. That's you, right? But what we also are dealing with right now in our city and perhaps across the country is a housing shortage, and in particularly an affordable housing shortage. And when folks ask me what is the root cause of homelessness, it is not necessarily mental health, it is not necessarily drug use, it is affordable housing. That is the underlying issue for homelessness. And when we have a lack of affordable housing and everybody is fighting for the same piece of pie and the pie is getting smaller and smaller, those who have more challenges, the folks that I serve, are competing for that housing, but they have more challenges to get there. So if you're dealing with mental health issues and you're trying to access housing that is limited in supply, it's going to be difficult for you to get there. The other difference for most people who are experiencing homelessness that makes them any different from you and I is, because we all talk about we can be one paycheck away from that circumstance, one medical crisis away from that circumstance, right? Is that those folks often don't have the safety net of relationships, right? So there's housing insecurity, there's food insecurity. The folks that we tend to see that don't make it to somebody's couch, that don't get to live with an aunt or an uncle, who don't have a friend that's gonna cover their rent for a month, is someone who doesn't have relationships. They are relationship insecure. And so what I like to just leave with you is that you ask, how can you help with the homeless crisis here in our city of Philadelphia? Number one is it doesn't hurt to say hello to someone when you see them on the street. It doesn't cost you anything. Smile, hello, that is a human being that deserves that same respect. And what I have found in the few months that I've been there is that you could be the person that can connect that person to, that can be that relationship that they find. I was taking the bus every day to my new office, passing by a gentleman on the way to the bus stop. And I said hello to him every morning because he was out there. And one day he asked me what I do, and then he told me that he was actually living in this abandoned house around the corner. And I went to my team and I said, hey, do you know this gentleman? And they said, oh yeah, we've been trying to connect with him for years, but he's always refused services. And I said, well, today he's asked for help. And they said, well, Miss Donna, you were his person. So you may be the person for someone just because you smile at them every day. And if you're not ready for all of that, maybe you see someone who needs help, you can call our hotline and I'll make sure that number is left with you. And that is a 24/7 hotline. We will send our outreach workers to connect with someone, try to assess what their immediate needs is, maybe connect them to shelter for the night or connect them to some other resources, or just build that relationship so that when they're ready for housing, we can connect them. And that's 215-232-1984, 215-232-1984. Without a couple of things that I will leave you with, just some nuggets, is that what we believe at Project Home is that homelessness is solvable, and it is actually solvable in our lifetime, particularly here in Philadelphia. And with numbers like less than 1,000 people that are living on our streets, those are folks that can't get into shelters, that can't get into any transitional housing, because there are other individuals in shelters and transitional housing. But that 1,000 number is manageable. It is solvable. It is not San Francisco numbers. It is not New York, which are in the tens of thousands of folks who are living in encampments across their cities. We can do this here in Philadelphia. And for us to do that, it takes all of us, every single person in this room, every single one of our neighbors, every single Philadelphian, to be able to address the issue of homelessness in our city. And I believe that your housing stock is a critical piece to that solution. And as we work on a housing plan with the governor and the housing plan with the mayor and her 30,000 housing units and whatever other housing plan there may be for our city and our state, you should be a part of that conversation. I strongly believe that, and I know that your voice is critical and important to that, and how we can make it more, your business more feasible and successful so that you can be a provider of that type of affordable housing to our community. We need to be able to work with you to do that. And I will leave lastly with just this thing that I like to say, and I heard the senator say about NIMBYism. And I know that you often deal with zoning hearings and all those things when you're out in the community trying to maybe break down a single family into a two-family unit. And what we need to understand is that when we reject and we say no to affordable housing in our backyard, when we say no to supportive housing in our backyard, when we say no to all the other types of housing that meets the needs of the folks that I serve, when we say no to that, we get homelessness in our front yard. And so anything that you can do in your communities and your neighbors to just educate folks about how we all can play a part in solving homelessness in this city, I strongly encourage you to do it, and I welcome that. And if there's anything I can do to help you to get there and educate you, I'd be willing to do that. And I'm also open to answering any questions about the legislative process during the rest of tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Bullock? Okay.
Good evening. I appreciated your comments, Ms. Bullock. But, I got started in real estate back in 1986, and it was really not to become wealthy, but to create win-win. And that is that we would make money, I would make money, and that it would not be costly. And I did that in the South Philadelphia area, Christian Street, St. Albans, Rodman, and it is an area that I could get a lot more rent than what I'm getting and what I've gotten in the past. But because my objective was win-win, then it was affordable. I mean, I had people knocking down my doors to want to get in because it was affordable. But what the city has done is it has forced me and many others into a situation that we can't be. We can't be because we're spending so much of the rent, what we're receiving, on the price and the cost of being a landlord. And when I have had and witnessed my taxes, real estate taxes, going up $12,000 on one of my properties, You know, when I witness those kind of things, then I'm taking. And now it's really costing. It's almost putting me in a position where it's probably easier for me to sell and just get out of the business altogether. And I don't know and I don't understand how, we're trying to create these affordable units, 30,000 or whatever, and yet we're going to still let the vacant places sit. We're not really thinking about that. We're not developing that. So it is very, very frustrating.
Well, I'll just concur that I agree with you in many ways, and I hope to be a partner. Now, one, as a landlord, as a former legislator, I need those affordable housing units to be available. One of the things I've learned about what we do, like we thought we can solve homelessness here in Philadelphia, and I meant we, Project Home, by adding these 1,000 units of supportive housing, the supportive housing with all those services. And folks are saying, well, we did that. We built those 1,000 units. Why haven't we been able to solve it? And one of the issues is that we haven't been able to move people on, because even while they're becoming stable and they know how to access the services they need, they're able to manage their mental health, they can't move on because they can't find affordable housing, right? And so that's a problem, because now they're clogging up this very, unique type of housing for those who are vulnerable and that need. So I'm with you, sir. Like, we have a shared interest, and while I'm not in the legislature now and I haven't, I'm not voting on the things that may be impacting your business now, there may be some ways that we can partner, and I would say not just me and other providers that provide the kind of housing we provide, and you all understanding that we need you as a part of this housing market. There should be a continuum of housing that's available. And if there's regulations that are being put in place, and again, I'm not trying to put this on my colleagues here, but I would say, talk to them. I think a lot of the things that they're trying to do, and I'm not speaking for them, is good intentions of trying to protect who they see as vulnerable tenants, right, at a vulnerable time. But there may be unintentional consequences to those good intentions. And that's where this group can educate them to say, we are perhaps collectively, you provide a substantial, and I don't know what the numbers are, a substantial percentage of the city's affordable housing in communities where people live with their families, their networks, the folks, the other parts that connect them to each other, instead of in the high rises in Center City. That's not y'all. I know who y'all are, right? You're the folks that are leasing to that young person that's moving out of the home, or the elderly person that doesn't want to own a home anymore. You are in the community, and we need you to exist. And if legislation is putting you out of business, that's a problem. And that's a problem that we should try to understand a little more. And I appreciate this room for that. And trying to say, well, if you're really trying to target big landlords, which I think in most cases that's the intent, and if you also are trying to protect tenants, because you want to have the win-win too, and there are some tenants that we want to make sure that they're protected at a time when housing is scarce, how can we do all the wins for everybody? And that's just a conversation that has to happen. The hearings are one place to do that, and I heard earlier that you don't always get a fair shot at that conversation, but continued education and conversation with those who represent you to help them understand how their good intentions may have some unintentional consequences. And even from my perspective, I'm sharing with you that if you go out of business, that's a problem for me. If you have to raise your rent, that's a problem for the folks I'm serving. And so we need to figure out how we can keep a market that is available, that you're able to be successful as a business, but also is affordable to others. I'm sorry, I can talk a little much.
Okay. I would like to keep moving if we can. Thank you so much.
We'll
I do
have
appreciate
questions
it.
at the end.
Yeah, and we will have time for some additional questions. Very quick 10-second announcement. I'm asked to ask all of you to fill out the survey and give it to the person sitting to you at the end of your row. Okay, it's important that we get the survey from you. Up next, Councilmember Rue Landau, who I must say is always willing to be here when we have these meetings, so thank you for being here.
Hi again, everybody. Yes, I've been here many times in the past. I've been engaging with Hapco even when I was a lawyer at Community Legal Services representing tenants. I've engaged with Hapco. I engaged with landlord attorneys all of the time. Always have an open door to have these conversations, and I'm happy to be here again. So I have a long relationship with understanding the issues and really hopefully trying to find a balance in them. And I want to, where to start? There's so many ways to start. I love small landlords. I want you also to stay here in Philadelphia. I would appreciate this conversation of why people say that the regulations, even through, eviction diversion and things that happened in the past from COVID, why that is necessarily pushing you out. I think there's a lot of forces right now in Philadelphia that have not made it friendly to smaller business owners like yourself of holding on to businesses, and I think we in the city of Philadelphia want to do everything we possibly can to keep you. I know how important your housing is for Philadelphia. I know how important it is because the truth is it's not 32% of Philadelphians who are paying more than 30% of their income in rent. It's 50% of Philadelphians who are doing that. People are squeezed in a way that they cannot afford to rent in Philadelphia now. As we all know, the median rent, as reported by the major newspapers in Philadelphia, is $1,800 a month now. That's a significant amount for people where our wages are far too low. We've got a minimum wage that is $7.25 an hour, and thank the higher power, most people are not paid that. But we still have significant low wages happening in Philadelphia, which is actually our affordability problem. If you want to solve so many of our problems in the city of Philadelphia, we need more wages, cash infusions. That's how it would help it. I was running the Fair Housing Commission when all of the COVID emergency housing protections were introduced. I was helping to architect the part where the city, I worked for the city at the time, where we were making sure we were getting rent into the hands of the landlords so that the tenant can remain in the property and the landlord would be paid. I know how important this is, and I know that I've known Paul Cohen literally since I was 30-something, and 20-something actually. And while we spar often, we also, what's that?
Still 20-something.
All right. Wait a second. Right. We always can find some common ground of where we can agree, and also figure out, clearly we always talk about also where we don't agree as well. There is, I want to distinguish kind of how we work a little differently from how I see, especially when the state rep who left talked about what it's like in Harrisburg. It's different in city council. There's 17 of us. We are down the hall. We actually have offices directly next to each other. We call each other all the time. We collaborate on things. People can come into our offices. Come to my office, 592. The door is always open for you. Our phones are always here. We got my staff person, my legislative director, Jeff Serra, is here right now. We will give out our cards. We want to have these conversations, and we are trying to really crack the code and solve the problem here in Philadelphia. I'd say that we are actually on the cutting edge of potentially having an infusion of some of the resources that we've been looking for that will come out somewhere in the mayor's home plan that might not look exactly the way it was when she introduced it, but we're all working on to make that plan where we're going to borrow money or actually put out these bonds to get money in order to make sure that we are trying to really, really have a concerted effort to solve our housing crisis here in Philadelphia. I want to say very clearly, I legitimately have been doing all of this since 1996 when I was in law school. 1996. I have never seen so many people lined up together to say, let's put millions of dollars into this issue to try to solve this problem for Philadelphia. I don't agree with everything that I see in the mayor's plan, but I am so excited that we are all talking about this. I'm willing to take the chance on this. I'll borrow money from the city of Philadelphia in order to solve this problem. And a lot of it is to protect you, to make sure you still stay. And I see there's a lot of, you got to dig into this plan to see some goodness, which I think can come your way. I want to point to a few of the initiatives that she has in her home plan, because, you know, if you've looked at it, there is, she talks about the lowest income affordable housing, and then what she calls workforce housing, workforce plus housing, and then a higher level from there. And I am the most interested on the lower levels, but I also think that a lot of that includes the work, that includes what you're doing. She's got an initiative called Jumpstart, and it is going to be a way in which we are going to help people get security deposit money so they can more quickly move into your housing. This will be a fund that we've been waiting for in the city of Philadelphia and did not exist when there is definitely security deposit money out there, but not the pot that will exist, I believe, under this plan. And there will be ways in which we will, in this process, help people get the money together to get started. We don't want people moving into your places and spend every cent they have, in fact, go in the negative and be broke and have trouble paying rent. We want people moving into your units where they actually have breathing room, where they can not only pay for their kids' school trips and uniforms, but they can also pay their rent, and then they can go to the local restaurant and the local store, and that they can actually breathe and have this breathing room. That's what we want, and that's what I see in this plan. I am going to talk about two bills I introduced, where we have recently certainly had a little bit of tension here. But one is I call it my move-in affordability plan map, where the first bill is caps application fees and does a couple of things to application fees. If you own 5 units and somebody is interested in all 5, you can't ask them for an application fee for all 5 units, when really what you're looking for is their eviction history or their criminal record or whatever. You can do it once for all 5 units. I see some heads nodding. You want to know why I see heads nodding? Because the truth is I talk to a lot of you guys. I talk to a lot of landlords. And the truth is, I would suggest that you guys actually run fewer background checks or ask for less in application fees than some of the big guys do. If you're going to have 5 units, your job is to fill your unit. I know how much it costs you when your unit is empty. I know how much it costs you, and you want to try to get people in. The second bill, we're tweaking it right now, but it will, in only certain circumstances, allow tenants to pay their security deposit in installment payments. We have gone back and forth on this a lot. We are currently, I've gotten a lot of input on this one. And the reason why I've gotten a lot of input on this one, because I want to say despite, I want to make sure that the record is clear, that I had literally had more conversations with landlords, landlord lawyers, landlord lobbyists, including Hapco and all of you guys, than I did tenants before I even had what was the initial hearing on the bill, and we got to move it forward. Based on the input of Hapco and many of the other landlord lobbyists and folks and lawyers who I've talked to, we're already amending the bill. We are amending it to make it something that I actually think technically is a win-win for both sides. And we'll certainly make sure, especially with this Jumpstart Fund, that you guys get more money quicker. in the beginning of all of this, and hopefully not out of the pocket of the tenant, so they have more money to spend when they're in there. I just want to follow through with a couple other things first. The two more things I want to talk about, other than bills, and I'm here for the bills. I wanted to talk about, let me first just respond to, I don't even know what to call you in public anymore, okay? Rep Bullock, Donna, I've known her forever. When you were talking about transitional housing and how this is a process, right? You've got homeless folks, they can get into transitional housing. We want to get them independent and secure, and we need to get them into a new place, and they often can't afford it. But we also need those transitional units for the next people. We must keep this flowing. And one way we can keep it flowing, again, in the mayor's home plan, is a larger pot for what we call shallow rent. The city for many years has been paying a little bit of rent for folks who can't afford the low-income housing tax credit units, the LIHTC units who set them up at 60% or a little higher of AMI. These folks might not make enough money to get there, so the city might pay the difference. You only need $300 more a month to make sure this happens. The city wants those units filled. They want people housed, and the city has been paying this little bit of money. Well, we're going to expand the shallow rent program, and to me, that is actually one of the ways in which that this is a big win for Philadelphia's affordability. What if we expanded the shallow rent program to help the folks in Project Home's transitional units get into your units, where, like Section 8, but not Section 8, because it's almost a city version of Section 8, we're paying maybe $400 a month, sometimes even a little bit more, so that they can stay into your unit. Opens up your transitional housing units and gets your places filled with a portion of the rent guaranteed by the city of Philadelphia. Again, in my opinion, a win-win, and it's one of the most important things that I'm coming out of this home plan. Last thing I'm going to say, yeah, let's do that. Let's clap it out. We got that? Everybody can clap it out? I'm trying to get you the money, okay? No, I'm getting them the money. I'm getting your units free. Last thing I want to talk about. There's been something I've been trying to work on for a long time, and there's something in Pennsylvania called the Uniformity Clause. It's a tax issue where we're not allowed to tax people at in different ways when they're in the same categories. One thing that I've wanted to do, which is in response to the gentleman in the back who talked about his taxes going up, if you live in your home and your taxes are increasing, there are a bunch of programs that you can apply to, whether it's you got your homestead exemption, whether you got the loop, whether you get one of these programs. It keeps your taxes down because you live there. We do not have the same thing when you don't live there, but you've been renting an affordable place to affordable people where we want to keep them in the neighborhood. I have been having ongoing conversations literally since like the first month I got into office about how to make this happen. Look at Jeff nodding over there. Jeff's been working on this. We are not allowed, Loop was placed in the Pennsylvania Constitution, so this is something we can work on in Harrisburg to also get homes where you're renting them renting them at affordable rates. You can hopefully get that put in the Constitution, but I can't do that. So in the meantime, we are trying to get a city grant program to help you offset your taxes so long as you let your people stay in the property. We're close. I've told you this before because we've been working out. I thought this was going to be a piece of cake. I'm like, I got the best idea. I can't wait to do it. It's not that easy because it's illegal right now. But we are trying to find the way to make it legal to give you the relief you need. I want you, I'm sorry, the taxes are going up. And I want you to be able to keep your renter in your property. I want that renter there. That person has become a fabric of the community. They maybe send their kids to the local school. They might have a job that's walkable, rideable, whatever it's going to be. we want to try to keep them there. So I wanted to just make sure I put that on the record. I am happy to
Just
take any questions.
with
Yes.
regard to that, having been a legislator for as long as you have,
Yes.
I'm surprised you haven't realized that if you have a bill that makes absolute sense, you have no chance of getting it passed.
I'm coming back next year. I'm going to say that I did it. I promise you. I'm not doing this again. Okay. Right, okay.
Okay, so I know there are a lot of questions, but also in City Council, we may as well give Councilmember Anthony Phillips an
I'm not
opportunity,
gonna-
and then we'll open it up for questions.
I'm not going to be long, so we can just get to questions. Hi, everyone. I'm Councilmember Anthony Phillips, proud servant in Philadelphia's 9th District, which covers Northwest Philadelphia and Lower Northeast. Let me begin by thanking Greg, the board, and entire Hapco team for the invitation to be here. Before I entered this crazy world of politics, I worked in youth development. I helped hundreds of young people across Philadelphia get into college and debt-free and connect to livable wage jobs. And that is why, at the heart of our mission on City Council, I've been working on investing in quality of life for everyday Philadelphians and revitalizing neighborhoods block by block. We focus on practical, people-centered policies that improve daily life. So one of our first actions that I did on City Council when I was there, I created legislation to remove commercial tractor trailers on residential blocks that many neighbors and folks complained about. And let me be clear, we support truck drivers and entrepreneurs, but we also heard our neighbors, and we saw how big rigs parked on small blocks and were damaging sidewalks. So we work with local leaders, including our Masjid in West Oak Lane and other places in the Northeast, to find designated parking spaces for tractor trailers, but also noted that they cannot be in our neighborhoods. We've also taken bold steps to address illegal dumping, a persistent issue in our neighborhoods. We call for a formal City Council hearing to talk about how we can work on prevention and also the inconsistent enforcement that has really impacted our neighborhood. Thankfully, the mayor has invested a lot of funding into initiatives around illegal dumping, and we're seeing those attacks decrease in our neighborhoods, but we still have more work to do. I also championed the student pedestrian bill, which passed in 2023. That legislation has led to speed bumps around all of our schools in the city of Philadelphia. It's all coming, eventually all of them will get it. We have about 100 schools that have them now. And also, the legislation expanded, thanks to other colleagues who went on and did more with the legislation. It's now going to be at rec centers as well as libraries and senior homes. There will be no study to get a speed cushion in front of libraries, rec centers, and schools. They will now be automatically put down by the city of Philadelphia. Also, thanks to years of advocacy of many 9th District council members, I was also able to secure funding and it's final right before Mayor Parker left through my own advocacy to get the driveway repair program, which is the first in Philadelphia of its kind. It's a pilot program, so if you have an area where you're a renter, you can now get the driveway repaired through funding, and we're looking to increase that funding. So the last thing I just want to say that, let me say this clearly and unequivocally, small landlords are not the problem. They are our neighbors, and we got to find a way to work on both ends, which is why I talked about the importance of all of us as City Council, hearing both sides of the argument. I don't have the pleasure to sit on the Housing Committee, and so I don't always hear what's important to all of you, right? And I also focus on a lot of things around quality of life, youth, Parks and Rec, and so forth. So I'm here today to learn about what we can do to help you succeed, and we want to thank you for your investments in the city of Philadelphia. Let's keep building, let's keep protecting, let's keep moving Philadelphia forward one block at a time. God bless you. Thank you.
So I doubt there are any questions, but in the off chance that there are, we will start moving the microphones around and take some questions.
Steph. I'm starting this side, then you next.
Hi. This question is for Councilwoman Rue Landau. You talked about the two bills that you're instituting with the security and you've heard feedback from different landlords, and you guys are amending it. Is that amending have anything to do with the landlords not having to have the security broken down into 4 installments, one? And the second bill was the $20 application fee. Is that for only landlords who have more than 5, or is that going to be the set fee?
We're still working on amendments and talking to people and getting input, so I don't want to talk about anything final. There has, currently, it covers everybody, all landlords, and there will be an increase in the cap of the application fee and a kind of a structural change that certain people would pay, if they needed to, could pay their security deposit if it's 2 months' rent that you're asking for in 4 installment payments. But potentially, if you're asking for 1 month's rent, you can get it up front. That's kind of where we're playing for now. We're playing in now. Mm. I'm assuming you asked for first month's, last month's, and security deposit, all 3 of them? Not everybody does. I've heard from, I'm very surprised, actually. It's an interesting market right now. Again, I've been doing this since about 96, 98. It's a very interesting market. The larger landlords aren't charging anything. In fact, they're sometimes charging maybe $300, $500 period for security deposits, or waiving them completely and giving people a break. I know you're not the larger landlords. I'm sorry. I've talked to smaller,
we have to be calm so we can move this along, please.
I have talked to many smaller landlords who only ask for 1 month's security deposit as rent, and that's one of the reasons why I was asking your question. We are still working on amendments. We are still getting input on that, and I hear you.
The question's over here, but I had to because we know who it is. Sinette Collier. It's her first time in meeting since she was elected, our very own, elected as president of Greater Philadelphia Association of Realtors.
Thank you very much. Councilwoman and all of you up there, thank you so much for coming out this evening. But I think that one of the things that is not being addressed is income. So we all acknowledge that we have a poor city. And of course, the city making an investment, the city, I would hope, wants to get money back, right? Because you got to pay people back. The housing counseling piece could be very vital for helping people to get on track and to give them hope and vision to what they need to make in order to sustain themselves and also the city of Philadelphia. So I just think that we are not hearing enough about that. And so for us as landlords, you know, it's a lot of risk, right? When you decide to go into business, it's a risk. You got to pay your business privilege taxes, all of what the gentleman said back there. Tax incentives. So is there going to be a tax incentive based upon some of the proposals, you know, that the Housing Committee is presenting? How does that work if we go out of business? So now you have more foreclosures because a tenant isn't paying. And I do believe in democracy. I think that everyone should have housing. But we have to look at it from an economic perspective. And some of the people that you were saying that you've spoken to, you know, I'm in the business. I've been in the business a long time. I don't know anybody that's only charging 1 month. And I would never tell any of my clients to do that because the security deposit, the word itself, security. So without the security, how do we stay in business and not be a part of future blight or hedge funders coming in and taking over the city of Philadelphia?
Just a quick response. One, we've been in a conversation with Housing Counseling Services, especially Clarify, who's doing an excellent job in Philadelphia, making sure that people have all of their documents and everything and their income ready so they can come and be stable to rent with you. The second thing is, I think we all know, right? You're only, the Pennsylvania law allows you to hold 2 months security for the 2 months rent for the first year, but after the first year, you've got to return 1 month. Got to tell you, for most of the folks that I've, I ran the Fair Housing Commission. We've got tenants. There's people in my office right now, my own staff, that are having these issues too. I'm sure it's not anybody in this room, but a lot of landlords do not return security deposits, especially that second month after the first year. So we're literally looking at a snapshot of 12 months. Happens all the time. Again, literally happening in my office as we speak. It's not, this isn't a myth. There are many landlords who do not return security deposits and certainly don't return that second month that they're not allowed to hold after the first year.
Hey, Ned, just want to say hi and thank you. I know we've worked with each other in the past when I was elected, and your office was in West Philly, I believe, right? And congratulations. I heard a few things in your comment, and one thing around income, and I think that's a huge issue for our city, right? We're understanding that we have this high poverty rate. I know that there's been some rallies today and this week around raising the wage. The state has been working on raising the wage. It is a real issue, right? Pennsylvania has the lowest minimum wage in this region. Every state that touches our borders, including the Commonwealth of West Virginia, has a higher minimum wage than we do. And we need to do some work there. And so there's some work around raising the minimum wage so that folks can afford more, and then also welcoming business into our city so that they can offer those jobs. And perhaps some of the same barriers that you're facing is deterring those businesses as well. So agreed, I just wanted to speak to the efforts around raising the minimum wage, and that's a very much an understandable issue for all of us.
Next question is up here in the front.
Councilwoman Landau, thanks for coming tonight. A lot of what you said sounded good about wanting to hear the landlord side, but it's a bad look when Paul Cohen is shut down and not even allowed to testify at your hearing, and you didn't even say anything about it. I was allowed to testify for 2 minutes on Bill Vargas. I'm not going to repeat what I said, but I'm the guy with a woman who owes me $19,000 in unpaid rent and utilities, and probably the only money I'll ever see from that is what she had to pay up front. Additionally, in addition to that $19,000, $8,000 was thrown out by the courts because I didn't give her a certificate of rental suitability. And I understand that there's a gentleman, a lawyer, Andy Felton, who either has or is going to propose to council that you put a limit on how much can be sucked out of our pockets for not printing out a piece of paper. And I wonder, I mean, if I was stopped on the street for not having a piece of paper called a driver's registration, they can fine me up to $300, but the city of Philadelphia can take however much they want because I didn't print out that piece of paper. So would you support that legislation, perhaps even consider sponsoring it, or perhaps Councilman Phillips, you would be willing to support and sponsor such a legislation?
Thank you so much for that. And the hearing had a couple of wrinkles in it, and in the future, there will not be the wrinkles. Thank you for the story that you shared at the hearing as well. As I recall, so much of it was about a little less about the bills I had and more about a landlord-tenant nightmare situation. And I hope that you can become whole, and there's a variety of ways that you can, right? You could get a judgment against the tenant. That judgment actually is good for 20 years. When you talk about the bill, yes, Anthony has walked around City Council and handed out his proposal. I actually think there's another interesting way we can get around this, where make it even easier. it's just a thought right now. I'm not saying it out loud, but I understand, again, I ran the Fair Housing Commission. I understand ways in which this can harm landlords. One thing I wanted to say is one of our biggest problems that we have in Philadelphia with the administration that I used to work in, right, is technology. And I'm the head of the technology committee. None of our systems talk to each other. And so when you have to get a rental license here and a certificate of rental suitability there, or even if you had to get to the health department there, dealing with lead, this is for restaurants, for landlords, for whatever. We need to have the systems talk to each other. So there's one-stop shopping for you guys. And also, if a tenant needs to see if you had a license, click. If you want to see if you have a certificate of rental suitability, click. Make things so much easier, and it'll be right there in the system.
Can I just address something? Okay, go ahead.
No, I just want to quickly, I just want to say I'm interested in learning more about it and reading into it and looking into that. I do want to commend my colleague for trying to do something around housing issues in the city. It's difficult to really address all of it, and so but I am also interested in learning more from you. Also, if I can get a copy of some of the policies that have been mentioned that are really terrible for landlords in the city, that you perceive as terrible for landlords in the city of Philadelphia, I need to know that. I'll be honest with you, I'm not always, there's a lot of landlords, a couple of landlords are from city council that own spaces, so they understand it. But I'm not always constantly engaged about these issues with landlords. So I would like to get all of that you all see written so that I can examine it too. So when things come up, we can, vote with a decent conscience.
If I could just jump in for 1 second, I understand, Councilmember Phillips, you may have to step out. But if there's any District 9 folks who would like to talk to you for a moment out, I'm being told that you can, you'll happily chat with them for a little bit. And we have about 10 more minutes.
I just have one thing to add to this gentleman's point. Councilman O'Rourke just introduced a bill that says that if you don't have your rental license, you have to notify your tenants that you don't have your rental license. If there's a violation against your property, you have to notify your tenants that you have a violation against your property, and you have to notify your tenants that they don't have to pay the rent. Okay? So to your point, not having the piece of paper, not only can you not collect the rent, at least if the tenant pays you the rent, you get to keep the rent. Now there's a bill that says not only won't you be able to keep the rent, you're going to have to notify the tenant. Now all your tenants in all your buildings are not going to be paying the rent at all. So at a minimum, if we could at least get that bill to be voted against, that would be a good start.
This is the one he introduced last week?
Yes.
Which one was this one? It was a lot of them. Okay, I'll have to read into it.
There's that bill will likely be amended, and there's a lot to talk about in there. It's a lot of pieces in there, and so there's going to be a lot of communication, a lot of conversation in that.
Why is everything against the landlord?
Sorry, we need to move on.
Huh?
We're taking questions. We got to take questions at a time.
I'm a licensed realtor in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. I'm a property manager. I have 106 tenants. And I also am an author on a real estate book. This afternoon at 1 o'clock, wearing my realtor's hat, I took a listing from somebody that, if I mention the name, which I won't, everybody in the room knows. I took a listing for his property for $585,000. Why is he selling? Because he's going to invest in the suburbs because it's too much aggravation investing in the city of Philadelphia. And I have a question to the young lady from City Council. Do you own any rental properties?
I do not.
Obvious. I knew the answer. Thank you.
Mrs. Landau, I listen to you here, and my feeling is I don't get it. Yeah. On the one hand, you want us to go in the affordable housing market. Yeah. And on the other hand, you are, and the city council is responsible that it takes 8 months to get one of those highly critical tenants out if something goes wrong. It costs me 15 months of rent. It wipes out the profit for 10 years. Who in the world would do that? And one more remark, $800 million loan. You didn't misspoke when you said debt. It is debt. That's $166 million in debt service. If you cut down the time it takes to get this very small amount of bad tenants, it's really very few. Cut the timeline that it takes us to get the very bad tenants out. All of us can invest with our own money, and the city does not have to take loans that will be future property tax increases.
Thank you so much. I want you to know I appreciate that comment so much, and I want you're talking about the eviction diversion program, and first want to note that you said there are very few bad tenants. I appreciate that. I think it's really important that we focus on that. The second thing is that we are all, one of my colleagues on council is doing a deep dive, and I'm going to help her, onto how to make the process work more efficiently right now, to make sure that for a couple of, the issues that Paul has even brought to me about repeat offenders and whatnot, that we can look at those issues and see how it can go faster.
That's the last comment. We have to end this soon.
So I'm sure Paul Cohen and others, other lawyers in the room can help you with this, but if you write a lease where the tenant is responsible for things and you're getting a CLIP violation based on what the tenant is responsible for, you can hold the tenant responsible for that. The city doesn't know who the tenant is. The city knows who the homeowner is.
Okay, everybody, we're going to have to cut it off. Already we're running. Okay, just based on time here, because we do actually have to leave here by 8:30. So again, we would certainly like to thank Councilmember Rue Landau for being here, Councilmember Anthony Phillips, who had taken off, I guess, and Donna Bullock as well. Thank you for being here, and I know to be continued for sure. I'm going to pass it on to Brian then.
So I know everybody's leaving, but we want to thank Councilmember Landau, Donna Bullock, Paul Cohen, and Greg Wertman. Thank everybody for participating. So listen, I know a lot.